the front door for a few minutes. But I'm just going to close the front door for another few minutes. I think it's going to stop now. The cicadas are too strong. They're too powerful, you can hear them anywhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Alright. Okay, that's all working fine. I'm almost ready. I'm just going to give people time to get into the room before I start. For anybody who's currently in the room and wondering what the format of this particular video is for today, what I want to do is I want to just give you a sort of an explanation of the kinds of spells I would suggest you select as a Warlock. I'm usually going to, from each area or each level of spell, I'm going to give you one spell that I think stands out the most. For those of you who are wondering when my next Warlock video will be, it may be tomorrow or it may wind up being released the day after as a live stream. This is because I've been working on another video which is how to actually make your own rewritable or dry erase blank battle map, and it's taken me a little bit of time to put it together. I'm hoping it will be available to release tomorrow. If it is, that's what I'll probably release tomorrow rather than the next one in the Warlock series. So that is certainly sort of what you can expect in terms of what's going to come up in the future. So while we're just waiting for people to jump in, and we're almost on time, it's almost time to crack on. I just wanted to point out that this particular video series won't necessarily have a whole 10 videos. I did a series of 10 for the Wizard, and the Warlock I don't feel like is quite as complicated. It doesn't need quite as many videos, certainly for the basics around it. Okay. We're almost at time. I'll try not to start early because I know that because I'm at least promoting and letting people know that I'm going to be running these streams at a particular time, that if I start early and they were sort of right down to the wire in terms of joining us, it can be a bit annoying. But we are at time, so I am supposed to be starting. A little message has just popped up. I love the way that YouTube sets up these little reminders and notifications. It's very helpful. Okay, so we're going to get started. Where is it? Where's the... Okay. There's my transition screen. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e or D&D 5e, and we're covering how to play a Warlock. This is part of a series of videos I'm doing on the Warlock. This is number 6, and this is covering the basics. So today I'm going to detail selecting Warlock spells. You don't have a lot of spells available to you as a Warlock, but neither can you know that many spells, so it won't really matter too much. So it's really helpful to have some idea specifically of the types of spells you might really want to pick up if you're going to be playing this particular class. So if you have a look at page 108 of the Player's Handbook, you'll see that there's a little bit of information on the Warlock and how that works, but what you need to do is turn to page 210 the Player's Handbook, and that gives you the breakdown, the Warlock list of spells per level. So cantrips level 1 right through to level 9. So we're going to be covering each one of these in turn and I will detail the ones that I think sort of stand out the most. So first off, let's start with cantrips. I've talked about cantrips before, and probably the most standout cantrip for the Warlock is Eldritch Blast, simply because it's a ranged force blast. It's something that will level up as you increase in level, which is very, very helpful. The other thing too around the Eldritch Blast is there's a lot of invocations that will help power up and make that cantrip useful. And considering you don't get that many spell slots and you need to take a rest to be able to get them back, you will probably need to use your Eldritch Blast quite a lot, particularly if you get stuck in a running battle. Now, the other spells that I think need to be sort of mentioned are the utility spells such as Minor Illusion, where you get to create either a sound or an image. It's pretty easy to pick up that it is an illusion, but still useful and can do quite a lot if you're quite creative. Another really helpful cantrip is Mage Hand, your ability to actually move something at a distance without actually touching it, which is really, really helpful. Prestidigitation, your ability to create a fire, put it out, clean things, change colours. It sounds like like a useless spell, but no, it can be very useful. Another spell that I want to point out in terms of the cantrips that you can find really useful is Blade Ward. Now, this particular spell gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. It sort of creates like a ward around you. It's a protective spell and it's a cantrip, so you can cast it as many times as you like. It doesn't last for very long, so that's the only thing to bear in mind. But the standout spell for the cantrip is the Eldritch Blast. That's what you definitely want to have in your on your character sheet. Okay, so let's have a look at level 1. Level 1, there's some pretty obvious choices with level 1. When it comes to anything like a level 1 spell and it's a Warlock, go for Hex. That'd be your first point of call. I would pick up Hex as soon as you can. And the reason being is that Hex gives you extra damage. So you cast the spell, but as a bonus action on additional turns, you're going to be able to move it as well. So you take down a target, you can move it around. So if you've got a long battle, you know you're going to be there for a while, then it's really helpful to increase the damage output of your spells and any kind of attack that you might be using as well. Another really good spell is Hellish Rebuke. It's sort of a defensive spell, which if you get struck by a blow, anybody close to you takes fire damage. Really helpful. Those are the two standout spells for level 1. Charm Person, so being able to charm somebody so you can affect how they operate with you, how they interact with you. I would also say that Comprehend Languages, surprisingly, an entire campaign can revolve around the inability to communicate with anybody, and Comprehend Languages is your ability to understand a language. You might not be able to speak it, but you understand it, and that will help get you past all sorts of problems, give you a whole lot of additional information you didn't have before, allow you to understand what somebody is saying, things like that. Armor of Agathis is another defensive spell at level 1. It gives you 5 temporary hit points at its lowest level, and it does 5 cold damage when you are struck and they're up close. So, and it also levels up. It increases in power as you level up your Warlock. So a useful spell. Arms of Hadar, basically another defensive spell. It's a 10-foot radius around you, and it's a 2d6 damage. It's like tentacles that come out and slash and smash your enemies. So if you want to avoid getting absolutely bulldozed, and somebody gets around the back of the front line, you have some sort of defensive spell you can use. Another really good spell that a lot of people don't necessarily pick up is Witch Bolt. Now, the reason Witch Bolt is so good is because it's a 1d12 lightning damage, and on top of that you're going to get ongoing damage. So every round you don't have to roll to hit anymore. It just keeps blasting away at that target. So you target the big boss. If you've got a big heavy hitter, somebody who's got a lot of hit points, you just hit them with that Witch Bolt, and you just keep locking it on and just keep pounding them with your spell. And it does increase in level and power as you go up in levels too. So a really useful spell. But out of all of the spells for level 1 in a Warlock, Hellish Rebuke is useful, but it's Hex that you want. Hex is the one that is going to be able to get you more power out of your Eldritch Blast. Remember, even when you've run out of spell slots, if you've still got Hex, you can still truck out quite a bit of damage with Eldritch Blast by combining it with Hex. Now, I don't know if you can necessarily see all of those spells that I've put up on the screen there, but if you increase the size of your screen so it's full size, you should have a better view of what's going on here. Right, level 2, Invisibility. One of the key spells for a Warlock. In fact, anybody who has a level 2 spell, Invisibility is awesome, simply because it allows you to get places that you can't get without being seen. So now you can go there because you're invisible. Hold Person, the ability to paralyze a humanoid for a short period of time. Misty Step, being able to teleport 30 feet, and it's a bonus action to cast it. So really helpful. You can use your cantrip and Misty Step in the same round, so that's why it's so useful. Darkness, creating magical darkness can really give you the edge, particularly when you need to escape or you need to hide from something that can cause a lot of pain for the party. Spider Climb, another really useful utility spell for the Warlock. It's going to allow you to crawl up walls and travel along the ceiling. Surprisingly useful in almost all sorts of situations where you're having to navigate across difficult environments. Next spell I would say I'd want to pick up is something like Shatter. That is a 3d8, hang on, I'm just going to close that door. Okay, I'm back. So the next spell at level 2 would be Shatter. I'd go for picking up Shatter because it does 3d8 thunder damage. It has a radius of about 10 feet and it can affect things that will likely shatter. This is why you use it. It's not so much that you want it to cast the spell because you're dealing with something that will take a lot of damage. 3d8 is alright, it's not great. It's the fact that if you're dealing with something that's made out of crystal or something that can be broken, so something that will be affected by Shatter, and there's quite a few things, rock, stone, things like that, trying to break them can actually eliminate the need to worry about doing thunder damage if you can break it up to little pieces. So this is why Shatter is so useful at level 2. Now the key standout spell for level 2 has got to be Invisibility. It's not the damaging spells, it's definitely Invisibility. It's the ability to make somebody else invisible so they can do some infiltration and scouting, and also the ability for you to make yourself invisible. And the spell levels up. It gets more powerful as you increase in level as a Warlock, which means you can cast it on more than one individual, which is really useful. Okay, level 3 is Counterspell. The ability to stop somebody else casting a spell has always been incredibly useful, and this is why I always say that Counterspell is super useful. Even if you're a wizard, Warlock, it's really useful. Being able to fly, so the spell Fly, anything that can fly is always difficult to hit, so a great spell to pick up. Dispel Magic, being able to get rid of a magical effect, not quite as useful as Counterspell. It's like you're dealing with an effect after it's already happened. So if you're going to have a choice between Dispel Magic and Counterspell, I tend to go with Counterspell. These are a lot of spells in the level 3 section I feel are more sort of defensive spells, trying to block somebody else for a Warlock, the ones that you want to sort of focus on. Next is Tongues. Now I know a lot of people think, well, why do I need tongues? But the ability to speak a language that you don't know and nobody else in the party does can be super useful. So that's why I say Tongues is a great spell at level 3 for a Warlock. Gaseous Form is basically your ability to escape. So you transform into gas and you can only move 10 feet. So do not use the spell unless you're close to a crack that you can pass through, because you do not want to be floating 10 feet in the air. You might have resistance to damage, but it will not matter. It will not matter if you aren't able to escape through a small crack, so you can't be targeted. That's the only reason to have gaseous form as an escape route, and you need to get to a location that allows you to pass through a small crack that nobody else can follow. So otherwise don't bother using it. Hunger of Hadar. Now Hunger of Hadar does quite a lot of damage, and it's a 20-foot radius. It's not comparable to Fireball, but it's certainly as good as a Warlock will get at that level, and also have an area effector spell. So area effector spell, Hunger of Hadar, super useful. I would say it's a trade-off between Hunger of Hadar and Counterspell in terms of the key spells you might want to pick up at level 3. So you're going to have to decide which one you prefer. Do you want to do damage, or do you want to stop the incoming spells? Okay, level 4, Banishment, sending something to another plane. This can work out really well for you, provided everything goes well. It's a little bit circumstantial about banishing them completely, but usually you banish them for a short period of time. It can be the difference between success and failure in a battle when you're dealing with a really powerful individual. So I highly recommend Banishment. Dimension Door allows you to teleport 500 feet. And I can't think of a spell that could be more useful. Certainly more useful than something like Gaseous Form. So Dimension Door is really useful. Pick that up if you can. Blight. It's basically going to do a fair amount of damage, and it does necrotic damage, and it's going to be really useful. Not quite as impactful necessarily as Hunger of Hadar because of the area that it's covering, but it is still comparable. It's about the sort of same, but it is a higher level spell. It is level 4. I would say out of the level 4 spells that I've talked about, Banishment is probably top of the list. And if you don't like the idea of Banishment because it's a bit of a risk, it's a bit of a gamble, then go for Dimension Door for getting yourself out of trouble. At higher levels you can take somebody else with you, which can be really useful too. Okay, level 5, Scry, being able to spy on somebody. That's always been really useful, so I always say go with Scry, particularly if you're getting access to level 5 spells. And the next one would have to be Hold Monster, being able to paralyze a creature, not a humanoid. We're not talking about Hold Person or anything like that, which, you know, you can pick up something like Hold Person if you really wanted to, but as it's not really sort of an option for you, I wouldn't bother at picking up Hold Person at level 2. I mean, you can if you really wanted to, but Hold Monster just umbrellas more than just humanoids. You can hold lots of different creatures now, not just the ones that are listed on the monster stat block as a humanoid. So the key one that I would think that you want to pick up for level 5 is Scry. Being able to spy on somebody is always going to be super helpful. Okay, level 6, there are a couple of spells that sort of stand out. The 2 spells that I had a look at that I've seen used well are Arcane Gate, so being able to move between portals. It's not quite as useful as something like Dimension Door. I mean, it is still useful, but I feel like Dimension Door does what it needs to do already. The other spell I would say that's more useful at level 6 is Circle of Death, and this is going to essentially do 8 6-sided dice worth of damage. So it's like using a fireball in terms of the damage output, but it's 60 feet radius. It is a level 6 spell, and it's not one of those spells you can pick up just by using your slots, because you can't cast a spell at that level with your slots. You have to use one of your other Warlock abilities, which I will talk about in the future. I don't want to talk about it just yet because I feel like it would sort of eat into this particular video. So for level 6, I would highly recommend picking up Circle of Death, simply because of the sheer area that it covers. Can't get any better than that. Radius of 60 feet is huge. The next set of spells for level 7 that I suggest picking up are plane shift. So that's the ability to travel between different planes. Now you don't have any spells that you've been able to access at this point that are super useful yet. So this is definitely going to get you from one plane to another. So by all means, pick that one up. Next one I would have to say for level 7 is the force cage. You create an invisible cube, a prison that you can encompass around a creature. So force cage can shut down a creature pretty quickly. So I would suggest that is a super duper helpful spell. Another great spell is Finger of Death. It's only about able to target one creature or one target, but it does 7d8 or 7 8-sided dice worth of damage plus 30. That's huge. It's massive. Necrotic damage. Yes, Finger of Death is exactly what it sounds like. You are trying to destroy something completely. You're trying to put them under the ground. Now, out of the level 7 spells, Plane Shift is probably the most useful spell I would suggest. If you don't feel like moving between the planes is going to be helpful for your campaign or the adventures that you're running through, then go for Force Cage or Finger of Death. Level 8, I still think that Feeble Mind is one of the most useful spells for dealing with mages and wizards, anybody who is using intelligence. You can pretty much reduce a wizard to absolutely nothing with Feeble Mind, which is why at level 8, Feeble Mind is the one I think you should consider picking up. Another great one is Dominate Monster. This is your ability to take control of the monster, literally take control of them, and they'll do what you want them to do. So out of the level 8 spells, I would go with picking up something like Feeble Mind. And if you don't like Feeble Mind, then Dominate Monster. The last level, so level 9, True Polymorph, transforming something into something else. Really helpful spell. I suggest picking that one up. The other one that's really useful is Power Word Kill, and this essentially allows you to kill or dispose of your enemy, and you do not have to roll any dice. Okay, all it does is it does a certain amount of hit point damage, and if that's enough to kill the creature or the target, they're dead. But there's no saving throw, there's no attack roll, it just works, which is really, really helpful. But out of the level 9 spells, I still think, because the max you can get for Power Word Kill, even though there is no save involved, which is always, it's guaranteed to sort of work provided they've got 100 hit points or less, True Polymorph is one of those spells where you can transform your allies or your enemies into something. And if you can start doing that, there's really no set limits now to what they could be transformed into. You can take a creature and turn it into another creature or a monster of some kind on your side of the battle, or into an object. You can turn an object into a creature. So yeah, really helpful. Super pumped for True Polymorph level 9. Okay, so what is the deal? You're looking at your Warlock, and this sheet here, you know, this chart that we've been going through and checking out, well, it doesn't make sense. At level 20, the highest slot level that I get is level 5. So how am I supposed to pick up my 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th level spells? Well, you're only going to pick them up once you get access to Mystic Arcanum, and that will be a topic for another video. I'm going to do that probably in the next one. Mystic Arcanum allows you access to the higher level spells which you can use. Okay, so I want to wrap it up pretty much there, and I'm going to sign everything out, and then we'll get on to the questions that people have. So if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. Look, if you're not already subscribed, then subscribe now. If you want to get occasional notifications so you know when I do another video, then click the subscribe button. but if you want notifications, there's a bell button beside the subscribe button on my channel, and sometimes you'll see it underneath the video when it's playing. This will let you know when a new video has been released on my channel. It'll also notify you when I'm going live stream if you want to be part of the live stream videos. In terms of questions, I'm going to answer questions right now in the live stream chat box. If you're not part of the live stream, I'll answer those questions in the comments if you have questions you want to place there. If you want to support my channel, then you just watch my videos. It's going to get me a little bit of AdSense revenue, which is great. But if you want to really support my channel, I don't really use Patreon. I don't think I like the idea of people paying me for content. Certainly because I'm not doing this full time. If I was doing this full time, I would consider it like a job, and you're getting a service and you're paying for it directly. So what I prefer to do is use affiliate links. So down below in the description, there are affiliate links to Amazon, where you can buy stuff, and the book depository, because I realize not everybody can buy stuff from Amazon. Free shipping from the book depository anywhere in the world is awesome. Okay, and when you go there, I get a small commission and you pay exactly the same price. And even if you go through that link and you buy something else, it doesn't matter, I still get the commission, so it's great. And that is where we're going to finish up. And I'll say, hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s, because that's what we want. If you keep rolling those 20s, you're going to be doing pretty well. Okay, don't go away, I'm here. And Bill, I see your questions and we will discuss what you want to talk about. Okay, so this is a good time to start placing out those questions if you have any, and I will answer as many questions as I can in the time frame I've got. I think probably 10 minutes is probably good enough, unless of course people start bringing up things that are a bit more involved. So I will answer questions about the Warlock, I will answer questions about different spells. I will obviously talk about multi-classing for the Warlock, because it's quite common for people to multi-class a Warlock to pick up other features from different classes just to make them viable for the duration of their campaign. On top of that, if you have questions that are related to just playing the game or being a dungeon master, I'll answer those questions as well. Okay, so Bill Richardson, you've got here, can you do an episode on multi-classing? Well, I can, and if you're here, we'll talk really briefly about multi-classing a Warlock, if you like. The problem with talking about just sheer multi-classing, it's such a broad topic, and it's the sort of topic that I feel that somebody like John Shackle should be around for, because he's had a lot more experience multi-classing. But I can give you a little bit of advice around multi-classing a Warlock based on what I've seen them play at my table. Okay, so Bill Richardson, you got here. I would like to know the down and dirty on multi-classing so that I can make my Warlock more effective or efficient and less squishy. Okay, so one of the first things that I've noticed with multi-classing and having levels of Warlock is that a lot of the players at my table will take a level in a different class that is associated with something like charisma, or even just something that has a really good high armor class, something that can wear armor. And I've seen people pick up something like the fighter at level 1 and then take levels of Warlock, and that's simply to get the armor proficiency. Or paladin. So paladin and Warlock, because there's a combination of charisma going on here. You still want charisma to be your highest stat for the paladin, but picking up the paladin means that you can access it. So when do you pick up these other levels? You can also use the rogue. The rogue can be good simply because of the type of damage you're doing, provided that you're using something like Pact of the Blade. So if you're a rogue and you're doing damage, it can still be effective. You can still use the rogue for ranged attacks, and that includes spells, so it's not completely useless to you to pick that up. When it comes to multi-classing, you need to turn to the section in the book on multi-classing to actually check out all the details, because there is a chart that explains all of that information and how it works, and it will give you an idea of when you should be picking up those particular levels. I would say 3 levels of Warlock is good. You probably don't want too much more than that unless you really are enjoying the Warlock and you feel like it's what you want to focus on. But as I said, most of the people I've seen playing at my table, they tend to pick up those new features as quickly as possible. So picking up a different class as quickly as possible in the first attempt to sort of build out your Warlock. So don't go straight into Warlock. Sometimes it's more sensible to wait a little bit longer and pick that up at a later date, so you can get the armor proficiency of a different class. Because you don't necessarily pick up all of the proficiencies because you are multi-classing. You actually need to do a little bit of work around what you can access. So there are some details about the proficiencies that you gain on page 164, and this is really important in terms of your Warlock. So if you have a look down here, it says here multi-classing proficiencies. Warlock, so what proficiencies? You're going to get light armor and simple weapons. So none of that's going to be even remotely useful to you. Okay, it isn't remotely useful to you. There's no extra benefit to doing so. So I wouldn't even worry about the fact that you might be picking up your Warlock level later on. But have a look at the fighter. Okay, multi-classing proficiencies that you will gain access to. So when you gain your first level in a class, other than your initial class, you gain only some of the new classes' starting proficiencies, as shown on the multi-classing proficiency table. So the fighter, you're going to get access to light armor, medium armor, but you don't get access to heavy armor. You get shield, simple weapons, and martial weapons. Okay? So that can be a little bit of a pain, particularly if you wanted to pick up heavy armor. You know, you wanted all of the armor proficiencies. Now paladins it's the same sort of thing for the paladin as it is for the fighter. And the rogue, really picking up the rogue's abilities, you don't need to necessarily go into the rogue at level 1. You can do that after. You can pick up your Warlock level and then pick up some rogue levels after. But I would suggest going straight into fighter, paladin first, and then going from there. And that's simply so that you get access to more of their proficiencies. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. I don't have a huge amount of experience playing multi-class characters, but what I do understand is that if you're going to gain access to the proficiencies of another class, you want to try to pick up all the best ones. And a fighter at level 1 gets all of the armor proficiencies and shields, simple weapons, martial weapons, and yeah, you don't want to lose that heavy weapon proficiency if you can. So try to pick up the fighter first. And same thing with the paladin. Exactly the same process. If you want to get access to really good armor, you're going to need to pick up those particular classes first. Now that we've sort of roughly talked about all of that sort of stuff, I think that sort of covered all the questions. Nobody else seems to have any more questions available to answer, so we're going to close it down there. I will come back either tomorrow and do another live stream, or you'll get another video released, and that will be for how to make a dry erase blank battle mat. Probably more useful for dungeon masters than players. I am aware that I have done a few videos as I've been doing this series that have been tailored to dungeon masters, which means I will be running, after the Warlock, I will be running more player focused videos, because I did about 10 or 11 videos straight and they were all around the dungeon master, and so I want to try to do the same thing for the players. Try to get you 10 videos. Once I've got 10 videos out, then I'll go back to the dungeon master and we'll give you some different content. And obviously I've been going backwards. I've been going from the wizard to the warlock, and we'll probably go to the sorcerer. So we're probably dealing with a lot of the the harder to use classes rather than going straight for the simple stuff. Okay, I think that's it. I think we can call it quits for today. And look, you guys have a good night or good day. If you're at work, go back to work. If you're if you're time to have your meal, and have your meal. And I will see you later.